All right, it is Tuesday, August 27th, morning of, which means today is the day the teams around the NFL must trim their rosters to the regular season limit of 53 players. So anyone who tells you it's the final 53, that's never accurate because a lot can happen during the course of the season. And let's remember, 49ers will keep 53 players on their active roster. They'll also have a handful of players on injury lists that they can bring back later in the year. They'll also have 17 players on the practice squad. So when it comes down to it, that's essentially more than 70 players that they'll kind of retain within their bubble. And then, once the season gets rolling and either guys on the practice squad get injured or there's some sort of shuffling of that composition of the practice squad, or even guys on the regular season roster, the trickle down effect, they might end up calling back guys that they've had in training camp, guys that they delivered bad news to today. So as this day begins, the 49ers have 84 players on their roster. So they got to get down to 53. So 31 roster moves. Brandon Ayuk is on the active roster. So he counts as one of those players, one of those 53. Trent Williams is not on the active roster. He's on the reserve did not report list. So he does not count toward the roster limit. So if everything remains the same today, Brandon Ayuk will have a spot on the 53 man. Trent Williams will not. And when Trent Williams reports to camp, then the 49ers would have to make a roster move to enable him to be moved to the 53. Okay, so some of the moves are pretty much already set in stone. This year, there's a new rule where in the past, if the team had a player on injured reserve designated for return later in the season, he had to be on the initial 53-man roster or on the 53-man whenever he went to injured reserve. That is not the case this year. This year, each team can designate two players for return who are moved to injured reserve on cutdown day. So for the 49ers, they will certainly take advantage of that because of Clea Davis and also John Feliciano, the offensive lineman. Both of those guys sustained injuries. Feliciano in training camp just never recovered, and he had a procedure. Clea Davis got injured in I believe it was Tennessee Titans game. Had a really strong opener. Both of those guys are expected to be ready to go middle of the season. 49ers do envision scenarios where both players are needed. So that's why those guys will go on injured reserve designated for return. The other injured player, Ambry Thomas, broken forearm from the Titans game. More than likely, he wasn't going to make the 53-man roster. So look for him probably to be injured or assigned waived injured. So that would create a roster spot as well. Kyle Shanahan dropped some pretty strong hints on Sunday that Talanoa Hufanga would open the season on physically unable to perform, the PUP list, which would make him ineligible for the first 4 games of the season. So look for him to go on a reserve PUP along with Dre Greenlaw going on reserve PUP. So that's 5 spots right there. Isaac Alarcon, the international pathway player from Mexico, he has a roster exemption. So he's actually the 91st player on the team during training camp. He'll be waived, and then the 49ers will bring him back to their 17-man practice squad. So 49ers got a bit of a head start on their roster moves on Monday, releasing 5 players, the most noteworthy of which Matt Breida. Just a logjam of running backs there with kind of everything pretty cut and dried, I believe, with Christian McCaffrey, obviously, Kyle Juszczyk, the fullback, Jordan Mason, Elijah Mitchell, Isaac Guerrero. And then they have a guy that I'm sure they're going to keep on the practice squad if they can do that, Cody Schrader, undrafted rookie from Missouri. And so that's where the 49ers are right now. A lot of roster moves will be coming throughout the day. One of the more interesting spots, probably 3 spots where I always kind of wonder what the coaches are thinking. Defensive line, offensive line. I think they have some decisions to make at tight end, specifically with Logan Thomas. They brought him back. He was hampered early in training camp with a hamstring injury, but they did bring him back last week. He didn't play in that game against the Raiders on Friday night. So, what does that mean? Is he going to be on the 53 man? I don't know about that. My guess is they want to bring him back in, um, not guarantee his salary for the season, and keep him on the practice squad. Another veteran guy I think they can keep on the practice squad is Trent Taylor. Early on, I thought that Taylor was not necessarily a lock, but certainly the leading candidate to be the punt returner. But with the emergence of Jacob Cowing, how good he has looked in that discipline, as well as the speed that he shows, in a lot of ways, the versatility he shows as a receiver, running routes at every depth, also, jet sweeps, that kind of thing. Jacob Cowing, it looks to me like the guy who will be back there handling punts on the opener, and then it's up to him to just hold on to that job. So, 49ers will get going here soon. I'm sure they already have, as I'm talking here on Tuesday morning, and then maybe later in the day, after the 53 man roster, the initial 53 man roster takes shape. I'll check back in, but I always love it. People will ask, do you expect any surprises with the roster? And it seems like there always is a surprise, something that like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. But of course, if I expected a surprise, it wouldn't be a surprise. So I'll probably see you later in the day.